Hey, me in the chat, let me know that you can be our online sharer. You can. All right. Jessie said, I can't. And then she said, oh, wait, I can. I can. All right. Thank you, Jessie. I appreciate you.
What link is it? I might have missed something.
It's in the chat.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, it's in the chat for our online folks.
Yep, I see it.
All right, awesome. And then there again are just too many things happening on this screen, but we're gonna make it all work in just a second.
Sure.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second and I will start sharing again because I need to make sure the sound is shared. Because we're gonna watch a video. All right, Rachel's gonna need that link. Jessie, you're on. Your job is happening. Hopefully you're ready for it. All right, let's get back to this. Oh my goodness, I can't see enough to like make it full screen. Okay, there we go. Woo! All right, we're back. So, hi everyone. I am Sarah Schroeder, and I am a faculty member at the University of Cincinnati in the School of Education. I teach instructional design and technology, and I coordinate our undergraduate pre-service teacher educational technology coursework. Am I missing something?
I think I muted this mic.
I muted?
No, I muted it.
Uh-oh.
Now,
there I am.
can
Okay,
you hear us better out there in the world?
Do I need that? I was a theater major in college, so I tend to blow. I'm like this far away and it's still that
Yeah,
loud.
it's very
So
loud.
I'm not gonna get in front of that for all of you. Just gotta do that. Okay. So I've been at UC for about 12 years. I work with corporations, nonprofits, K-12 schools, pretty much anyone that needs e-learning solutions, which since COVID is everyone. But one of my areas of special interest or passion areas is universal design for learning. But I'm finding these days it's even more important to start by just finding out how everyone is doing on any given day. This is actually a huge part of universal design, which all of you as being part of the LEND program understand. Right? You already know why we need to be checking in with people and making sure they're okay. So let me know, like, what's filling your bucket these days? And you can kind of draw it on the slide. You can type it on the slide. You can mark on the slide kind of where you're at. Are you feeling filled? Are you feeling drained? But this is a drawing slide, so you can actually like drag your mouse around and draw on it, which, let's see. So let's see how everyone is feeling. Oh, people are feeling like everything's going from filled to drained very quickly. I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, we're not seeing a lot on there. Feeling right about there. So right at the edge. So whose drawing is this? So is that, Katie, are you feeling filled or drained?
In between. So on Thursdays, my morning draining usually, and then when I come here, it starts to.
So this is a bucket filler for you.
Yes.
Yeah. How many of you, the LEND program is a bucket filler these days for you? Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. I didn't see everyone's hands. How many of you, your just schedules right now are draining your bucket? Anyone besides me? I'm feeling so drained by my schedule, but so filled by the people around me right now and programs like this. And just being able, sorry, I have to check the chat while we're talking, which is super fun time. Oh, people are putting attendance in. All right, I'm gonna ignore that for now. All right, but being able to know what's filling your bucket, what's draining your bucket, so you can take care of yourself is probably more important than ever. Let me also see how you're doing in terms of your ability to kind of be here today and focus. So I know what we're dealing with. As a teacher, this usually tells me I either need to get everyone up and moving around, or I need to turn the lights off and let everyone just kind of take a moment, you know? Let's see where everyone's at today. I can't draw on this, but I'm feeling probably like somewhere in here today after the morning I've had. So let's see where everybody is falling on here. Ooh, we have quite a range. Who's my person up here? Who's the one all the way up in the almost red? Is that an online person or is that a? Yeah, well, it definitely takes a lot of effort. No one wants to claim being up at the high end. Are you feeling guilty about doing good? You shouldn't. No? Anyone want to share any reasons why we're all the way down at the bottom today? It's a very quiet group. Do I need to do what I do to my college students, make you stand up and like start crossing rooms? And I may in a minute. Yeah, Amy. Awesome.
So yeah, I was more closer to the bottom end, not the very bottom, but just like so many projects and they just keep coming. So I just feel really behind, which stresses me out.
Anyone else just not clicking off the list right now? Like things just keep piling on. Maggie's feeling you. So is Caitlin. That was Amy. So is that Sarah. That's easy for me to remember. All right. So is Sarah over there. Yeah.
Like I'm almost around 6.
You're what? I'm sorry.
I'm like at the level of 6.
And so why are you at a level of 6?
Schoolwork,
Oh, thank you.
schoolwork and the other stuff like going on in my life right now. It's all like complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah. Anyone else in the it's complicated category? Like that's your status. It's complicated. I'm feeling the exact same way right now. But today we're going to try to take a few minutes and not worry so much about the stressors and instead think about our bucket fillers and take some time to consider how we can apply universal design for learning to our own contexts. So I can see from your name tags and what's happening on your tables that there's a lot of different contexts happening in this room, which is a great thing. My personal context is I am a parent. So these are my 2 children, which if Steph is watching this virtually, she's not even going to recognize my daughter. So I actually got to know Steph. My daughter is on the autism spectrum, and that's how Steph and I met. Was Steph was her doctor, which I'm fully happy to disclose because she's amazing. And so my daughter on the left has Asperger's. She's 16 and she's in high school, and she's in like real high school for the first time. It's making me nervous. So that's happening in my life where I worry about her every day being in a giant full-size high school. And then my son on the right is 14. Believe it or not, he's 6'2", but he's 14 years old and a freshman at the high school. And you see him in his soccer uniform there. That was right after they beat Elder. So Battle of the West Side this last weekend. So, but that's stressing me out too, right? That's my context. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids, both unique, both different in many, many different ways. And I come to Universal Design for Learning because I'm really passionate about my kids' experiences with doctors, with, support agencies, with schooling, with teachers, with other families, with all of the things I've seen, and how accommodating difference is so incredibly important, especially in learning. And I think we don't see it enough sometimes. Just the things we can do every single day to accommodate the really wide variability in our learning environments. And so tell me on this slide if you're in Pear Deck, and if you're not, you can type in the chat online if you're not in Pear Deck. You can't see the slides. No. So you're saying, well, thank you for telling me that. So something has happened. Well, shoot.
Let's see. Now it's gone. I can see you now, but before I could only see that little pair.
Well, I'm gonna change what screen we're sharing here so that, oh, dang it, and then I forgot to share my audio the second time. We love technology. I know, I'm a big fan. I tell my students that all the time. I'm like, we love technology. And they're always like, oh, hate it. Are we allowed to say that in this class? I'm like, yes. Now, can you see the slides?
Yes, I
Online
can.
folks? You see my adorable children now?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. It's very important to see my adorable children.
Yes, it is.
So, thank you. I'm very proud of that. So my daughter's an artist. My son is an athlete, right? They're polar opposites. My daughter's on the spectrum. My son has generalized anxiety and health issues that affect him every day, right? And so universal design just comes from my heart when I talk about it. So you'll hear my passion for this. But if you could type on this slide, if you have any particular special interest in universal design, I know this is typically kind of a popular topic for this group. So if you have any particular interest or connections, if you can put it in the slide, if you're willing to share it, and let me know what you're seeing or what your connection might be to universal design for learning. And then we'll kind of see what our common thread is. This is the other thing that's great about Pear Deck is you can see when people are typing and like how many people you're waiting on. It'll pop up at the bottom, which is really nice for stalling and things like that. Anyone else have teenagers right now? Bless your hearts. I feel you. High school's rough.
My youngest is a senior, so I've had 3, this is the 3rd.
So you've been there.
It's funny, you should, when you get the last one, it's a little bit different, kind of checked out.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I'm not used to high school sports.
So I was anxious.
The schedule of high school sports without a driver in the family.
My daughter plays 3.
The number of heads that just went, oh yeah, with like an eye roll was staggering. All right, so
Yeah,
let's
wait
see
till
what
they
everyone.
turn 20.
I'm sorry.
I said, wait till they turn 20.
Oh, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, this is a whole new ball game with this young lady. I just look at her and like, Jesus, keep me.
I am so with you. I'm saying that every day as girls keep inviting my son to their house every weekend. He's 14. What is wrong with you? So some of you have connections with individuals with communication difficulties. Oh, you were a TA for an online program. How many of you have been a TA or an educator in some capacity? And then of those of you, how many of you have seen a lack of empathy for students who have differences that need to be accommodated, right? So this is something, I'm glad you haven't, Griffin. I really am glad you haven't so much. That's encouraging that you've had positive experiences, but I think it is challenging, yeah, you learned about UDL at UC, your son learns differently, your brother learns differently. So how many of us, it's a family member, someone we've seen struggle with professional education or with K-12 education or higher education so we all can find some connection to this topic, whether we are an educator or a learner or a trainer or a coach or a guide of some kind. This is going to be relevant to all of you. And if I can, I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time controlling my mouse. So today what we're going to be doing is looking at universal design for learning. We're going to be doing a little bit more of a deep dive than if you've done a training on UDL before. It may have just been like the main 3 kind of chunks and then that's it, which is what we see a lot. So we're going to try to really apply it to our own contexts today and look for those benefits to the learners in our own context. And then we're going to work on developing some strategies to leverage UDL in our own context as well. So that's a big ask in the amount of time we have, but we're gonna try our darndest to do it today. And I want you to start by just thinking about learning in general. And to kind of wake everyone up, turn to someone nearby you that's within shouting distance. And I want you, after you've thought for a second about something, I'm sorry, that microphone is killing me, about something that you are really good at. And my college students love to throw napping into the equation. I don't want napping as a choice here, but what is something you're just really good at? Right? And I want you to turn and share it with the person next to you. And then together, I want you to come up with the steps that you went through to learn how to do that thing you're really, really good at. So what were the steps you went through? And for our online folks, you can feel free to think individually and then type in the chat or add it into the Pear Deck for us. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes. What's something you're really, really good at? And then what were the steps that you went through to learn how to do that? To like build your skill. All right? Okay, go.
I would say I'm good at impressions.
Oh my gosh, who's your favorite impression?
Well, funny enough, like, even though I did a Mickey Mouse impression, I'd say my best one is Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's right.
So we have a lot of cooks, apparently. A lot of people are putting that they're really good cooks. So I think you all need to have a potluck, like some kind of a pitch-in meal in a park somewhere. So what was the first step that you identified that you had to do to learn how to get good at what, or how to learn what you were really good at? What was the first step?
I know Maddie and I both talked about like lots of repetition and exposure to whatever that is. So hey, I have this interest, so let me like do it a couple times and like maybe see the materials or see the ingredients or whatever, and then like progress from there.
So repetition and practice. How many of you had repetition or practice as one of your steps? Right? That's clearly super important to getting good at something. But what comes before that?
Finding someone that can teach.
Okay, so how many of you had someone else that taught you how to do what you're good at? Right? And then what came before that?
Stress, motivation.
So what got you interested?
In my thing,
Yeah.
well, mine was baking and I like to eat baked goods.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So who else had a before that, like to get you interested? What got you interested? Yeah.
I like dancing. Like when I was at 3, I watched like someone dancing and I told my parents like I want to do it.
Okay. Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I can't see your name tag because my eyes are not good. Ramian. Awesome. So you saw someone else, right? So how many of you had, I saw someone else do it in your steps, right? And for my college students, sometimes that's YouTube, right? I watched a video. And then for other people, it's, I saw my grandparent do this, or I saw my parent or my sibling or best friend, right? But those steps are common, like across learning. That's just how our brains learn. And so often in learning environments, we jump into, all right, I'm going to share information with you. Now you're going to go do it, right? And that's not how our brains work. It's just not. That's not how we learn things, which pretty much says education's broken, right? But we're going to fix it. So the really good teachers you've had in your life, think about those really good teachers you've had. And you're shaking your head, yes. So tell me how you pronounce your name. Kavya. So Kavya, what was a really good teacher you saw or you've had in your life?
So, well, I was talking about my dancing also, actually, just like Ramya.
Yeah.
And my dance teacher she had so much experience, like years of experience. And like one good thing that we really, like I really appreciate about her teaching was related to how she was like strict with us when we needed it and like to give us structure. And then she also encouraged us to be ourselves and like to practice, or she encouraged us when we did something well and stuff like that.
Yeah, great. So she let you do your own thing in some ways, but she gave you enough structure that you knew what was expected. And you've pretty much just defined universal design for learning, like right there in that. And so as we talk about UDL, it's really focused on brain science. It's focused on how we learn and just naturally how we get good at things. And it's also focused on just good teaching, right? Just good teaching, good training, good coaching. It just fits. And so when we talk about universal design for learning, it's really not rocket science, right? It's just the idea that everyone can learn, just not on the same day in the same way. So you saw at the beginning with your stress check, not everyone was in the same place today. So today may be a really good learning day for some of you, and it may be a not so good learning day for others. And if we expect everyone in the room to learn the same way on the same day all the time, we're going to lose people. We're going to lose parents. We're going to lose colleagues we're training. We're going to lose children we're working with. We're just going to lose them, right? They're just not going to get it. So we have to learn, how do we apply something like universal design for learning that's research-based and proven to help us meet the needs of those learners that may not learn the same way on the same day, which is pretty much all of us, because we saw that just in here. So we're going to start at the beginning with universal design. So how many of you have seen these? Yes. How many of you have used these? Yes. Who is this built for? Does anyone not know what this is a picture of? Everyone's pretty clear on what it's a picture of. Okay, good. So who is this built for? These curb cuts.
People with like physical mobility issues.
Right, people with mobility issues in wheelchairs that needed a ramp of some kind, typically, right? Or maybe a walker or some other on crutches, like something where you couldn't physically go down a curb, right? But who uses them? Everyone, right? I asked how many of you have used these and you all raised your hand. Why do other people use them? Why do people who may not have mobility issues use these? Convenience. Who are the people that might use this? Parents with strollers. Anybody else?
I think about like at the store with a grocery cart, like it's really hard to get it up the curb, so if you do that, it's a lot easier.
Absolutely. Anyone pushing pretty much anything, right? Or pulling. So if you have a backpack with wheels, if you have a stroller, if you have, my mother-in-law pulls everything around in one of those giant like baskets on wheels, you know, the canvas ones. She's always, of course, it's always full of baked goods, but she's always hauling them everywhere. So I always say too, just clumsy people like me. I mean, I've walked off of so many curbs and twisted my ankle that these help me too. And then we've seen these adapted over time. So they didn't always look like this. This is not a great one just because it turns, which is not the most accessible setup. But I picked this one because you can see the texture at the bottom of it. And that's a relatively new feature of curb cuts in the last, what, like 10 years, maybe 5 years, 10 years. And those were added to add another level of adaptability. So they were made for who? The texture was made for who? For people with vision impairments, right? Who uses it? Right? I mean, we see people now like walking and not looking where they're going all the time. And so it really serves everyone. I've seen people walk right off curbs and into streets, and this helps them too. So we see universal design for learning really benefiting everyone. So we have to think past the idea of universal design for learning being for people with special needs or with documented special needs, that it really benefits everyone. My daughter, when she was in school, I frequently had to create the supports for her and then take them in. Jen may not remember this. I don't remember if Jen remembers this or not, but me like walking in with things to them, I was like, here. But when she had a wipe off list, because organization was a huge issue for her in school. So she had a laminated wipe off list on a ring, and we had like a magnetic hook on the side of her desk that we'd hang this checklist for mornings and afternoons when she had to pack up or clean up or anything. And so she would pull her dry erase marker out, mark it off, she'd hand it to the teacher, and they'd go, great job, and they'd clean it up. What do you think all of her typical classmates said, her neurotypical classmates?
They wanted one.
They all wanted one. Everyone wanted one, right? Where's my checklist? So they help everyone. So we have to plan ahead. We have to prepare ahead. We have to design ahead. The other thing is, my daughter, now that she's 16, she does not want anything different than her classmates. She does not. So she doesn't want to pull out her laminated checklist, and she's the only one with a laminated checklist, right? So if we put supports in place ahead of time, she doesn't stand out anymore. You know, she's not the one in the classroom pulling out her laminated checklist. My son has various digestive disorders, and he frequently has to get up and leave the classroom quickly, right? He doesn't want to be the one standing out. If teachers would have more flexible restroom policies, my son wouldn't be the weird kid getting up and leaving all the time, right? That's what he calls himself, the weird kid getting up and leaving all the time. Nope, I don't call him that. But that's what he thinks others are seeing because he stands out and he doesn't want to stand out. So we want to try to, yeah, Amanda said if her legs hurt from working out and she can't go one more step, she uses these. But yeah, absolutely. So we want to think about how we can front load our design and make it easiest to accommodate all of the needs that we may not even be aware of that people around us have. So universal design started in architecture. How many people, I should have asked this right at the beginning, how many people have experience in universal design for learning? So Kavya does. Did you learn, were you the UC person? You learned it in a UC class? Has anyone else ever been exposed to this as a learning concept? You have a little bit, kind of, you know about it, but not, okay, cool. So it started in architecture. I love Children's Hospital because it is a fantastic example of universal design for learning. And you, now when you walk through the building, you're gonna notice all of those things everywhere, right? Look at this door. How many people can access that door easily and quickly? All I have to do is go like this, right? I don't need to have a grip. I don't need to have, mobility in my wrist. I can have my arms full of stuff and turn and push it and I'm out, right? There's probably a button somewhere too that I'm not seeing. But Cincinnati Children's is great. They have designed a building that is equitable, that is flexible, that there is tolerance for error. So if I go down the wrong hallway, anybody ever go on main campus and you're like, where am I, right? So how do you know where you are?
There's signs everywhere.
Signs everywhere. What else do they do? There's maps everywhere. Color is everywhere, right? So if you know you're supposed to be in the cheetah orange B, right? And they don't just give you color, they give you like 3 different ways to know you're in the wrong hallway. So it's like orange, cheetah, B, right? It's real hard to get lost. So the tolerance for error is huge at Children's Hospital main campus. And so if you can't read English, you can look for the cheetah, right? Or you can look for the orange, and you have other indicators. If you have poor vision and you can't read it because you can't see it, you can look for the orange, you can look for the cheetah. If you just have a bad memory like me, I remember cheetah, but I don't remember a 4th floor. And so it gives me so many different ways to remember. It's perceptible, simple and intuitive, and it requires low physical effort. So that's what we're thinking of when we're thinking of universal design for learning and architecture, right? So a ramp, an easy doorknob, things that, some kind of a sensor that we can go through that opens the door for us automatically, a button. So those are the things that we've seen in architecture before it became for learning. And so this was an example I just shared with you was, a turn doorknob, which is actually very difficult to open for a lot of people. Anyone from people who are left-handed, anybody left-handed in here? Those turn doorknobs, do you ever have trouble with those or have you just gotten used to it?
I think I've just gotten used to it,
I
but
used
scissors
to
were
it.
a big issue for me growing up. Like,
Scissors are huge. Has anyone who's right-handed ever thought about how hard scissors are for people who are left-handed?
Or right-handed desk.
Oh, desks. Yeah, who's online that's,
Oh,
identify yourself,
I'm
voice from the
left-handed.
clouds. Who is that?
Leah, I'm left-handed.
So you're left-handed, so you get it.
Yeah, and my daughter's left-handed.
Yeah, so the desk, the scissors, all of it.
Mhm.
Now they make scissors that are neutral. And that's a universal design thing, right? Not just left-handed scissors where you have to buy special scissors, but scissors that are neutral. You can pick them up with either hand and they'll work. And so the goal is not to make special things, it's to make things work for everyone. Like Children's has done. I swear this is the only way I can find my car at Children's Hospital in the garage, because otherwise totally lost. Is the, I'm on floor A, P3, Rhino, orange, like whatever I need to be able to find it. Can you think of any other examples of UDL in your world? You can type them in or you can raise your hand. Yeah, Greg.
I'm not sure if this is particularly one, but there was a time where you'd use a crank to be able to roll up your windows. Now you just have to press a button to be able to roll them up or down.
It is absolutely one. Cars are one of the best examples of universally designed features that are flexible for everyone, right? Any other, cars are a great example. Any other examples you can think of? Yeah.
Automatic flush, like toilets, and then sinks, so hand dryer, doors.
Yeah, the automatic flush toilets. I will have to say though, if anyone's ever had a child with sensory issues,
Yes.
automatic flush toilets are my nightmare when my daughter was little, because she would run out of the bathroom pants down around her knees, like trying to get away from the toilet before it flushed. Anybody else? Yeah.
Velcro shoe
Yes, or laceless.
or laceless, exactly.
My son has fine motor issues. You think a 14-year-old wants his friends to see him struggling with tying his shoes? I mean, he can tie them, but it takes him 3 times longer than everyone else. So I have to buy laceless soccer cleats. I have to buy laceless tennis shoes. Everything is laceless. So now he has gotten over that a little bit because he really likes Jordans. And so, but he double knots them and like ties them within an inch of their life when he leaves the house. But those laceless soccer cleats, those are my salvation, because no one wants to sit in front of their whole soccer team as a high school student and be fumbling with the laces. So yeah, it's a great example. Great example. Anybody else have one?
What about the automatic paper towels that are in bathrooms now? So if you have a problem trying to like click it down to get to the paper, get access to the paper towels, you only have to now just wipe your hand in front of it.
Yeah, and the automatic soap dispensers and things like that. And those don't just benefit people who may have mobility issues. My husband has really severe OCD and he doesn't want to touch anything. So it also helps him not, be in there trying to do it with his elbow and like get it working, he can just feel so much more comfortable and independent in spaces, not having to touch things. So it's neurodiversity too. It's not just physical diversity.
To add more to Leah, some bathrooms also have like the air dryers that you can use.
Yeah. And when they give you both choices, right? We've got paper towel with an automatic, and then we've also got the hand dryers that you stick your hands in and they go on, right? So having choice. And that was a great example, Greg, because choice is what universal design is all about, is flexibility and choice and options. Was there anything else anyone typed on here? Y'all are so talkative. I don't have to worry about the Pear Deck too much, which is nice. Yeah, see, everyone's like, forget Pear Deck. We're just going to talk, which is great. I love this statement by CAST, which is the organization that really supports universal design for learning and does all of the research on it. And they said UDL is nothing less than a manifesto declaring the right and ability of all learners to soar. So when we shift universal design from architecture or industrial universal design to more educational universal design or universal design for learning, when we add that L in the end, we have to think of it as this manifesto that's just saying we can all do this. Let's just build it up front so we can all do it. Let's build it up front so Katie's not having to raise her hand and ask for accommodations in the middle of the class in front of all of her classmates. Let's just let Katie be Katie, right, in her class. And I'm not saying students shouldn't advocate for themselves, or I'm saying they shouldn't have to, right? So my daughter's excellent at advocating for herself, but she shouldn't have to. My son shouldn't have to fight his teachers on whether or not he can go use the restroom, right? They shouldn't have to. So if we build things up front in a way that are flexible and pay attention to variability, then we can prevent a lot of that. So we're going to watch a very quick video. And as we watch it, I want you to just jot down, and you can put in the Pear Deck, or you can just jot it on paper, or in the chat, whichever is easier for you. What does this video challenge about your beliefs or reinforce about your thinking? And I'm also going to pause it at one point and ask you a question. So this is multitasking at its best with this video. And people online, you should be able to hear my audio. So please let me know if we have any issues. I should have been letting it load while I was talking. We get to watch a commercial first, just for a bonus.
So you're a woman in the executive ranks of your career, or you hold a top-ranking position in your field, and the pace of your work never slows down.
Please welcome to the TEDx Sonoma County stage, Todd Rose.
It's 1952, and the Air Force has a problem. They've got good pilots flying better planes, but they're getting worse results, and they don't know why. And for a while, they blamed the pilots. They even blamed the technology. And they eventually got around to blaming the flight instructors. But it turned out that the problem was actually with the cockpit. Let me explain. Imagine you're a fighter pilot. You're operating a machine that in some cases can travel faster than the speed of sound. and where issues between success and failure, sometimes life and death, can be measured in split seconds. If you're a fighter pilot, you know that your performance depends fundamentally on the fit between you and your cockpit. Because after all, what good is the best technology in the world if you can't reach the critical instruments when you need them the most? But this presents a challenge for the Air Force, because obviously pilots are not the same size. So the issue is, how do you design one cockpit that can fit the most individuals? For a long time, it was assumed that you could do this by designing for the average pilot. That almost seems intuitively right. If you design something that fit for the average size person, wouldn't it fit most people? It seems right, but it's actually wrong. And 60 years ago, an Air Force researcher, Gilbert Daniels, proved to the world just how wrong this really is and what it was costing us. Here's how he did it. He studied over 4,000 pilots, and he measured them on 10 dimensions of size. And he asked a very simple question. How many of these pilots are average on all 10 dimensions?
All right, so what do you think? What do you think they found? What percentage? Pick a number between 0 and 100. What percentage of the pilots that they measured do you think were average on all 10 factors?
0.
We have some people who are really bold, like 0, none of them.
5.
10, 5.
6%.
Don't you love how I just messed with you? 0 was the right answer. So 0, right? I know, I like messing with you. It's so funny how we can persuade people though, isn't it? Like so funny.
The assumption was that most of them would be. Do you know how many really were? 0. Gilbert Daniels proved there was no such thing as an average pilot. Instead, what he found was that every single pilot had what we call a jagged size profile, right? It means no one's at the same on every dimension. And this makes sense. Just because you're the tallest person doesn't mean you're the heaviest. It doesn't mean you have the broadest shoulders or the longest torso. But this is tricky because if every pilot has a jagged size profile and you design a cockpit on average, you've literally designed it for nobody. So the Air Force realized they had a problem, and their response was bold. They banned the average, meaning that moving forward, they refused to buy fighter jets where the cockpit was designed for an average-sized pilot. And instead, they demanded that the companies who built these planes design them to the edges of dimensions of size, meaning that rather than design for, say, the average height, they wanted a cockpit that could accommodate as close to the shortest pilot and the tallest pilot as the technology would allow. And today, we have the most diverse pool of fighter pilots ever, but here's the thing. Many of our top pilots would have never fit in a cockpit designed on average. So, most of us have never sat in the cockpit of a $150 million fighter jet, right? But we've all sat in the classroom. Here's what I mean. Even though we have one of the most diverse countries in the history of the world, and even though it's the 21st century, we still design our learning environments like textbooks for the average student. No kidding. We call it age appropriate, and we think it's good enough. But of course it's not. I mean, think about it. What does it even mean to design for an average student? Because a student is not one-dimensional like struggling to gifted, students vary on many dimensions of learning, just like they vary on dimensions of size. Here are a few obvious ones. And just like size, each student, every single one of them, has a jagged learning profile.
All right, so take a second, and I want you to think about what Todd Rose said. And I want you to consider what challenged you about that video or what reinforced your thinking for your experience. And you can write it on paper, you can just think about it, or you can put it into the Pear Deck. Or the chat if you're online. Does anyone want to share what's challenging their belief or reinforcing their thinking? Yeah, Katie.
I agree with what he's saying, and I'm an OT, so I think this, my brain kind of thinks like that too. But in my everyday work environment where I do patient care, the furniture that's in the space is not like, who's in charge of this? It seems like someone who's never been around human beings before, like who made these chairs. So I think it's hard when I have an idea about how things should be, and then like business people who are not doing this stuff are the ones that are making the choices on this.
Yeah, right. You really do think about who's making decisions on things, who are we consulting, whose voices matter, whose stories are being told in our decision making. It's really important who's given voice in some of this. There's a speaker, actually, I told Steph I would share it with everyone. I know y'all are busy human beings, but we have a speaker coming on Monday to UC and everyone is welcome. And I actually have a Zoom link if you want to join virtually, named Cornelius Minor. I don't know if anyone's familiar with his work at all. He wrote a best-selling book called We Got This, Being the Teacher Our Students Need Us to Be. And he talks about street data a lot, right? Like, how do we collect street data? How do we talk to the people using it? How do we talk to the people in the space? How do we find out what is actually needed and what the causes are behind things before we just assign a solution that doesn't work? And what came out of this study on the Air Force fighter pilots, what came out of this was adjustable seats in cars, right? That's why we have adjustable seats in our cars, was because of this study. They were first used in fighter jets. So, I mean, this was a real study that had to be done, and the manufacturers had to come up with flexible cockpits, and it directly impacted cars today and how we drive, right? So if we're paying attention to these things, we can learn how to transfer it to other environments too, and how to benefit people in other environments. Anyone else? Greg, you looked like you were ready to say something.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what he said, and adding on to what she said, he's definitely really hammering in the point that the system that they came up with, where the average person is the baseline for building certain things, it isn't really the most accurate way to be able to accommodate what is average nowadays, since everyone is different in their own way.
Yeah, there really is no average.
Absolutely, and I believe a couple people have put in there, as you just said, average just doesn't exist anymore. Everyone learns it their own way. Everyone has things that makes them different, but yet same.
Yeah, there are two words I tell my students I don't want to ever hear them use to describe learners or anyone that they work with or anyone that they're talking about, and that's normal or average. because they just don't exist. They're mythical, right? And so we really have to look at each use case. We have to look at each person. We have to look at each individual environment and setting and so many different pieces. And a lot of people get frustrated and they think, how am I going to do this? How on earth were any of you thinking this? Like how now, okay, this is all fine and good, right? Thanks for sharing. But there's no way I could possibly do this in any kind of learning environment, in a training, in an education environment. There's just no way I can accommodate everyone. And that's true to some extent. You're always going to have things pop up that you haven't thought about ahead of time. But if we try to design to the edges, when we're designing learning experience or training or materials for people to use, a PDF, a handout, like whatever, if we try to design to the edges and take as many things into consideration as we can, we are going to meet the needs of the most learners possible. And so that's really the goal, right? It's not that you're going to create the perfect thing that's going to meet everyone's needs all the time. It's what can we do to accommodate as many people as possible up front to prevent that having to backfill, because this sounds time consuming, but in reality, having to constantly adapt everything for all of these different needs takes way more time than just thinking up front. And I always joke around, I did some consulting work for a very large corporation in Cincinnati, who will remain nameless, but it's a very large corporation in Cincinnati. And I was sitting way up high in the tower talking to the executives. And I said, okay, so as I'm building this training, how do I get the videos captioned? Right? What are your resources for captioning videos? And they said, oh, you don't need to do that. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't what? And they said, you don't need to caption videos. We don't have anyone here who needs that. This is a true story. I said, you are a multinational company. I am creating an international training program for you that's going to be virtual. And I don't need to caption the videos because there's no one that needs it. I was really confused. I said, fine, I will caption the videos myself, but just know you need to not do that, because I actually know someone who works for you, who is one of your lawyers, who 100% has to talk through an interpreter and has to use captions. So it's not true. And think about who else uses captions. How many of you use captions on your television at home? I do, right? I mean, 80% of the hands just went up in the room. How many of you use it because you have some type of hearing impairment or hearing challenge? Only 2 or 3 of the 80% that raised their hand said they turn captions on. So why else do we turn captions on?
Sometimes it just like helps me like understand.
It just helps you understand, right? Anyone ever turn them on because it's in a language that isn't your native language, right? And it helps. Anyone turn it on because you're more visual than auditory, and so seeing it helps you process it and remember it? Jessie said ADHD, sometimes she misses things. I have the same issue. I just miss things, and then I can kind of have it from 2 different ways. Greg, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna raise my hand saying that I am a visual learner.
Yeah, visual, right? And so we have to think about why we're doing things, and it's really for everyone. And captions are one of those things that drive me crazy because it's so easy now to caption a video. So if you're creating a YouTube video for parents to help them, know how to use something at home, caption the dang thing. Like it takes 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes and it's captioned. And then you don't have to go back in and caption. And don't use the auto captioning. For goodness sakes, don't use the auto captioning. Clean it up, right? Griffin's cracking up. I'm sorry. Am I making you laugh?
That is just funny because we talk about closed captioning audiology all the time, so it's very relevant.
Very relevant, right? Yeah. And you need to caption them, and it's not that hard. And if anyone needs a quick tutorial on how to caption a YouTube video, just shoot me an email, and I am happy to teach you how to do it because it is so easy now. And if you think it's going to take you forever to caption a video that's an hour long, my question for you would be what? Anybody guess what my question would be? Why are you posting a video that's an hour long? That would be my question, because that's not great practice either, right? I'm actually, Jen doesn't even know this. I'm working on my EDD right now.
Get it, girl.
I know, I'm almost 50 and I'm starting my EDD with 2 high schoolers. So smart. But my statistics professor, he doesn't post one video to teach us stats in a week. He posts 6, right? And they're all 5 minutes each. And they all cover one single concept. Oh my goodness, it's changed my life. Because if I had to watch a 30-minute video on stats, I would be lost because I'm not a numbers person. I was a high school English and theater teacher. I mean, I know it's hard to believe I taught theater because I'm not dramatic at all, but stats, whoo man, right? So short videos, captioned videos, lots of graphics, reinforce things visually, right? All of these things we can do up front when we're creating training materials or help materials, super easy to do. So the entire goal is to reduce those barriers to learning. And I'm just gonna start flipping through this because we've talked about all this already. But when you're thinking about UDL and Universal Design for Learning, make sure you're thinking about flexibility, not just in like your materials, but also in your instructional goals for learners, your outcomes you're trying to look for, make sure those can be flexible as well. My favorites are when teachers grade creativity. Exactly. Griffin just looked at me like I was insane, right? Because it looks different for everyone and there's absolutely no way to measure it. So you have to make sure what you're trying to measure is actually measurable, right? And it's not something so variable that you can't observe it. Assessments, any methods you're using to present content or activities you're doing with your learners, and then materials, right? So trying to have a variety of things. Anybody need a break? Because we're an hour in. Anyone need to stand up, stretch, do anything right now, or is everyone good for the most part? All right, I'm gonna shorten things just a little. This has been a good group for talking, so I love that. But I want to just talk about these 3 things really quickly, and then where we're gonna head. I have a handout here that's actually from understood.org. If you've ever been to Understood, don't you love Understood? Such a great, it's actually a partner cast, like they work together. Yeah. So understood.org, I just completely ripped off one of their articles that I'm not supposed to print. And I printed it for you because I'm a highlighter. I don't know about everybody else, but like I like to highlight. I think this article is posted in Canvas, but if it's not, I'll make sure the articles I share and the slides are all posted in Canvas, and you can feel free to reuse anything you find. So we're going to take this worksheet in just a second, and we're going to think about UDL in a variety of contexts. And so we're going to kind of create the same thing. Like traditionally, this is what it would look like, and using UDL, this is what changes I might make in my context. But before we can do that, we need to make sure we understand what UDL is. And there's a link on this slide that you can pull up, and it's going to take you to, if you go down to the bottom, or it may be, it's next to the little pair on your slide. And it's going to take you out to the full UDL guidelines. I would highly recommend you bookmark this. It is just a fantastic resource. And it's going to show you the 3 different chunks of UDL. And then underneath here, each of these are clickable and will give you more ideas. So if you're like, ooh, I really need ways to help with perception, right? You can click on that. It's going to give you all kinds of ideas. So we're not going to spend time with it right now, but it's a fantastic resource to go back to. And I believe that's linked in Canvas too, but again, if it's not, I'll double check. So what Cass is saying is there are 3 different areas of our brain we have to pay attention to when we're trying to learn things. There's the area of our brain that really focuses on why. So why the heck should we care about this, right? And when I started this talk today, this session, the first thing I did was, how do you learn, right? I made you start thinking about yourselves a little bit. The first thing you said when you said, this is how I learned how to do the thing I'm really, really good at, is you saw someone else do it and you saw them benefiting from it, right? You either got really yummy food, because Amy likes baked goods, we learned, right? So Amy got good food out of it, so she wanted to learn how to do this, yes? So how do we get our learners engaged? If it's parents, community members, colleagues, students, kids, whatever, how do we get them to care? And that's the why. And not just how do we get them to care, how do we get them to persist? So how do we get them to care, but then how do we get them to stick with it too and continue? So that thing you were really good at the beginning, I know, like, I stink at instruments. It's just not my strength there. Anybody else ever really wanted to play guitar? But you only ever really wanted to play guitar? Yeah. Oh yeah. I bought a guitar at one point. I sold the guitar very shortly thereafter because I'm just not good at instruments, right? I didn't have the reason why. There wasn't a big enough why for me to stick with it. So you have to give us a big enough why to stick with it and convince us. It's like my son with his medication, right? He feels the why when he gets sick, when he doesn't take it. But he's just now old enough to really care enough to take it. I wish someone would have taught me how to get him to care enough when he was younger to take it. And I wouldn't have found the piles of it behind my couch. True story. Oh yeah. Piles of medicine. No wonder it wasn't helping, right? You weren't taking it. And then representation. So the what of learning. So if we're trying to teach a student something or a child something or a parent something, so think about the child life specialist here at Children's. So how many of you have either witnessed a child life specialist work or you've had a child who's needed a child life specialist? Is everyone familiar with the child life specialists here at Children's? They're one of the best examples of UDL on the planet. So they come in and then the child needs a procedure done. What do?
Walk you through it.
They what?
Walk you through it.
They walk you through it and they don't just tell you what's going to happen. What do? They show you, right? So they tell you, they walk you through it, but then they bring the mask in that's going to go on your face and they show you what it's going to feel like. And then they show you the IV that's going to go in your arm, right? So they show you everything. They show you pictures. Sometimes Children's has a fantastic media office here that will design things for the doctors and the child life specialists, and they'll show you what's going to happen in the surgery in a 3D model on an iPad, right? They do all these things. And then they give you the why. Why are you having this procedure done? Why is it important that you lay still, right? All of these things. So they give you all these different ways to know what's going to happen. So the same thing, when we want somebody to learn something, we can't just give them an article. Like you didn't see me just walk in and be like, all right, Maria, read it, right? You're going to be able to do this at the end of reading this article. You will. You'll be able to do it. Don't you feel confident that you'll be able to do this at the end of reading this article? You should feel confident, right? If you read it right. So we can't just give it to them in one way, right? We need to make sure we know the best way and the multiple ways. And then the action and expression is, how do we know they've got it? So how do we know they can go out of this room and do it? Right? What practice are we giving them? What checklists are they using? What are we observing of them that lets us know that they've been successful? So do they know they've been successful, and do we know they've been successful? And are we giving them different ways to demonstrate that? So multiple ways to demonstrate it. Any questions about this at this point? Or anything else we've talked about, because I've thrown a whole bunch of stuff at you. I get really excited, so I forget to ask the questions. Any questions so far? No? Jen, what time do I need to go on this?
Usually do like 2:50.
2:50, perfect. Yeah, excellent. So no questions at this point. All right, so you have the link to the CAST guidelines. You have this slide with the 3 big networks that are affected by UDL that they're focusing on: the affective, the recognition and the strategic networks, the why, the what, the how of learning. And then this will be a good time to get up and stretch and like take a little break if you need to. I'm gonna put up in a second a slide with some different. All right, there's my. Tell me when I'm on copy. Somebody else stop.
Stop.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So. Just make sure everybody gets one. I have no idea how many I'm giving anyone. I know I have more than. All right. So you are getting this handout or the article if you're accessing it digitally. And it has two columns. So one column is in the traditional classroom, right? This is what it looks like. And then the other column is, this is what it would look like if we were applying universal design for learning. And so you'll see, you know, like I mentioned, my daughter's accommodations. So the second big block is accommodations are for specific students. And this one in UDL, the accommodations are for all students, right? So the wipe off checklist, that's for the students. And then it's also for all students, right? So it really works for everyone. So what we're gonna be doing, come on, Mousy. There it is. Oh my goodness, I really can't see what I'm doing. I'm so sorry. All right. Yeah, so this is what we're looking for. Okay, so what we're doing is we're gonna choose one of these contexts, right? So I'm using educational practices to empower children, right? To do something that would help them feel more confident in their day-to-day living, or would help them better be able to care for themselves, or you know, whatever you think that context would be. I'm an advocate for with families, right? So I'm going to be doing something with advocacy where I have to educate them. Training educators. So anyone go out into schools and do training for educators, do professional development, or train people in your own workplace. Community or educational awareness, child or patient education, or online resource development, or some other type of resource development. So I want you to think about which of these contexts most applies to you and your job and what you're doing and why you're here at Lend. And I want you to do kind of the same thing where you think, what does this look like traditionally? So what kinds of things do you see happening traditionally? And then what would this look like if I applied universal design for learning to it? How could it help me improve my practice in this context? So are there any questions about what you're doing? Any questions? Do you think we could come back in about 10 to 15 minutes? Process and summarize. And again, this is way more fun if you're working with someone else. So I would really recommend you grab someone else. So is there anyone thinking you are going to look at advocacy? So environments where I would be advocating for or with families. Raise your hand high and look around the room and find your people. All right, there's your people. Anybody training educators? You want to focus on that context. Anyone with Kavya here? Don't leave her by herself. No one wants to be with Kavya. It's not that they don't want to. Okay, Amy's gonna partner with Tom. Who else?
I can.
Okay, awesome. And then what about empowering children? So doing something where you're working with children. Okay, so here's your people up here, Brandy. All right. Okay. Is that Brandy?
It is.
Okay. My eyes are so bad. I'm telling you. I can't see anything far away. What about community and community education or awareness? Who would be in that group?
I mean, that does sound like community.
Katie's name tags like community engagement. I got
Me, but I'm still figuring it out.
Katie's figuring it out. She may come back to community engagement. What about child or parent education? So raise your hands high, split into at least 2 to 3 groups. All right, so raise your hands high, look around, split into at least 2 or 3 groups. 3, let's do 3, that's a lot of you. Okay, what about developing resources, either online or otherwise? So like creating PDFs and training materials, and nobody does that? Nobody wants to do that? Nobody's mission in life is to do that? All right, awesome. Okay, so we are at 2:20. Online folks, I'm gonna mute the speakers and the microphone so you can talk to each other. So if you're online and you want to work with someone else on this over the next 10 to 15 minutes, you can unmute and feel free to chat. I can also open up breakout rooms if you would rather do that, like speaking to the air. Online people. All right. So are we good right now? All right, so let's shoot for coming back in 10 to 15 minutes. We'll wrap it up. And we'll be done for the day. Me? You're flagging me down. Okay, I'll be right there.
Like in the middle.
I want to share remarks. I'm like, share a picture, how you're feeling today, you know, or whatever, and they have to talk in their group and then report out on their slides. Google Slides are great for this because I can just share the link in the Paradox and then they can all share out. So this is just one of my things I like to do to keep people on track when we're working and keep me on track when we're working. So how was the process of doing this?
Yeah, I think it took us a minute to like get in that mind frame or like frame of mind. And then once we were there, then we were thinking of like, oh, well, you know, we do this, what about this? And then it flowed a little more naturally.
You made a really great point that this is a mindset, right? This isn't just, oh, I'm going to look at a checklist and make a change, right? This is a mindset. And when you get into the mindset, you start to think about lots of things you could do. And then you go back to the guidelines, you kind of see what ideas they had, like, oh, I could do this, right? And you start to realize it's just really good teaching. It's just really good educational practice in any context. Anybody else have, what were your experiences in doing this?
Reflective.
Sorry?
A little more reflective.
Yeah, it really provides you a way to reflect on your own practice. Because I like the UDL guidelines because even now after teaching this for 15 years, you know, I can still look at that checklist and go, ooh, there's something I could do better, right? There's something I can do better. And I think UDL gives me that attitude of continuous improvement in any training environment and any teaching environment I'm in. And so, yeah, I love that. What else?
So we're in the same department, but PT, OT, so some of we were talking about the resources that we give families. And she has a really
good resource for serial casting, and there's like a video and a social story and stuff to do before you come and like all kinds of things. And then I pulled up one that I use regularly and I'm like, it's just a lot of words. But I think the more that you think about it too, it's like this needs to change because we don't even know if the caregiver that we're giving this to can read. And it's like, hey, here's 3 pages of stuff. Good luck. And some of the stuff is kind of vague. And then I was talking to my speech friends and they said when they give recommendations, sometimes they give very specific activities to do. So there's not a question about what you're telling them to do.
Right, exactly. Because you have to consider if the people coming to your materials have the experience to even process and apply them, right? Or do we need additional resources? And then for people that maybe don't have a high level of reading or are challenged by, I can't read stuff. Like, no offense, like my brain, if you hand me a bunch of paper, the chances of me reading it and actually understanding and processing it, and I'm an educator, right? Like, and this is hard for me. But if you gave me a QR code on that handout with a video talking me through it, I would use that. And a QR code, I can just scan it on my phone, right? Just scan it on my phone, I'm ready to go. So it's really thinking through how can we reduce the amount of text, increase the memory, increase the application? Is there a visual I can provide? Can I take paragraphs out and put in bullet points instead? Turn it into a checklist? It's little stuff, but it makes a huge difference in how we remember and use materials that we're making. How else was this process for you? Anybody hit any roadblocks? Anything hard about this?
Yeah, I think the one thing I was thinking about, and our group talked a lot about, like, what we're doing is oftentimes very verbally loaded or like just written out. And so really thinking about providing the best options as far as like getting their input. What works best for you? Would you rather me talk about this more visually using pictures? Would you rather me, you know, and just kind of working with the family to determine what's best for them versus saying, well, I'm sure they're going to be using visuals more. So I'm just going to pick that and default to that option. So I think we were talking about a lot. There's so many different ways to do things. And so just being flexible and talking to the individuals about what works for them and giving them that voice to say like, no, I don't like it this way. I want to do it this way.
Yeah.
Being able to adapt.
That is such a great observation to make. And I learned a lot. My daughter was working with Steph, with Dr. Steph, in dealing with her. She was having a lot of meltdowns in school, like just a lot of issues with just being unable to de-escalate herself, not really understanding why she was escalating, right? And she was very resistant to using supports. And watching Steph work with her and say, oh, you don't like this choice? Here, I got 3 more, right? I got 3 more choices in my back pocket. Which one of these do you prefer? So it wasn't, are you going to use them? It's, which of these would you be most likely to use? And then she would have her pick the pictures to put on the calm down chart. She would have her create, you know, the theme of the emotion scale. She was like, I want dinosaurs. Steph's like, all right, let's make it dinosaurs, right? Because dinosaurs sold it. So it's how do we give the user more choice, the learner more choice in this? And it's not hard to say, all right, we're going to make it dinosaurs. You know, it's like watching them try to get my son to drink after his tonsillectomy. Like I was in the hospital almost forever because my son wouldn't drink a cup of water, you know, when he was 18 months old and had to get his tonsils taken out. Finally, they started giving him Thomas the Tank Engine stickers. Suddenly he would drink, right? Sometimes it's just a sticker. So what were you going to say? I cut you off.
I was just saying clip art is really easy to use, so it's not hard to be flexible. I think we get into that routine of like, well, it needs to look the same to be like, you know, cohesive or whatever. But I mean, just because it's sufficient doesn't mean it's helpful. So.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of teachers I've worked with where they're like, but this is the easiest for me, right? This is what's easiest for me. And so this is what I want to do. And I'm like, I understand you do not need more work right now. Trust me, I get it. Teachers do not need more work right now. But how much work is it really to find a slide template that reduces the text and it's actually readable because it's not a purple background with blue font? It's not that hard, right? So sometimes we need to be flexible, even when it might be something easier for us. Yeah. What other experiences do you have doing this or roadblocks that you hit? So what questions do you have at this point? You just need time to think on it.
What would you suggest if want to make a change, but that's the way things are always done?
Oh,
and so it's like, this is how we do it. We're not changing it. And like someone, like these materials that we have, someone outside of me has to say, yes, this is okay. And then it comes back. So it's not like something that I can personally change.
Right. So yeah, that's tough. How many people feel a little helpless in their circumstances? Yeah. So the speaker we have coming in on Monday, which I'll share with Steph, and if anyone wants to join virtually, you can hear him speak. He talks about collecting data, like down and dirty, sort of easy data to convince people we need to change things. So I love his philosophy, because if someone in the school says, but this is the behavior policy, right? We can't do that because that doesn't fit our policy, right? What he'll say quite often is, give me 2 weeks, right? Let me just, for 2 weeks, can I just try this with one class and let you know how it goes? it might not work. Right? But then can I just get some feedback and see how it works? You know, and oftentimes people will be like, especially if they think it's not going to work, they'll say, oh yeah, try it, no problem. Right? And then you can come back with, you know, feedback on a Google form that you collected or whatever, that you can grab that street data and you can say, this was the feedback I got from this. Can we talk about shifting to this new model? Would you be okay with us trying it at a bigger scale? So I think it's baby steps sometimes with changes, especially if people are really set. This is how we've always done it. It's taking those baby steps and it's a low risk, like, hey, can I just try it with the 3 clients I'm working with and just get their feedback, right? Or I don't know if it's families or children or who you're working with, but I think those baby steps can be really helpful. You can't burst through the door with this type of stuff and say, hey, we're going to change everything. Because that you're not going to get a lot of buy-in if you're the rebel running in like, we're going to change everything, right? But you can pick pieces, pick your battles carefully, slowly change the culture, slowly. What other questions do you have? Yeah.
So we were coming up with a scenario for the advocacy piece of it, and family services piece of it. And so I had them help me because I'm going to do a presentation to my daughter's high school. So how do you incorporate, and what are some maybe tips to incorporate when you're talking to 400 and 500 people at a time, right? We're not just with the parent, we're not just with the patient, and we're not just in a classroom. We've now got a whole student body that I want to engage in this process, right? I want to teach, I want to be able to teach them and have them not just sitting there listening to me talk about statistics and, you know what I mean?
Right.
Just, I mean, how do you apply some of these? You know, we came up with some ideas using, like we did one here, an interactive video, right? How cool is it if I tell all those students to turn their cell phones off, right? I mean,
they have to ask the school first.
Right.
Check with the school first.
Oh, yes. I mean, I know they all have their phones with them, but I will check that.
Ask if they're also a lot of stuff's blocked if they're on the network. So you just have to like be careful, but I think most schools have released that stuff now. But you know, that's a challenging context because your audience is high school students. Things can go off the rails super fast, right? I mean, like off the rails. So you do have to be a little careful. I went to a talk. I don't know if any of you've ever heard of Jane McGonigal, but she's a brain science researcher, game designer. She has one of the most watched TED Talks on TED from like a while ago. But I was in a session with her where she had 3,000 people in this session. And she had everyone, to illustrate her point, connect hands and do thumb wars. Right? So it was like a little tiny thing, but she wasn't just talking at us the whole time, right? She was like, all right, everybody grab hands. We're going to do the biggest game of massive multiplayer thumb wars was what she called it. And it was an illustration of what she was talking about the connectivity of games and how they can connect us across the globe, but it illustrated it, right? And it was like a 2-second thing. I mean, it was really fast, but I still remember that. And it was a decade ago. And I don't remember much. So I think videos where you can incorporate stories, not just dumping content on people. Like, so what I do most of the time is design at UC. So I usually apply UDL to design. Mostly visual design is what I teach. And so you'll notice on my slides, there's very little text, right? Very little text. So anywhere where you can illustrate a number with a graphic, anywhere where you can put a face to something, have a quote, tell a story, right? Ask a hypothetical question. Again, can go off the rails really fast, but with high school students, but you know, turn to the person next to you and share this. It's not that hard to get a little bit of interactivity and more of that why. So I would recommend you go into the UDL, the why, the engagement, and look at how to get them interested in something. There's also a really good theory called Keller's ARCS model of motivation. It's Keller's and then ARCS, but it's like the different, why do we care about things kind of stuff. And it's really good for presentations too. It's not UDL, but it's all connected. What other questions do you have? I think we're out of time, but I'm happy to answer a question or two more if people have them. Also, Steph and Jen know where to find me. I'm right across the pond here in Clifton. So it only took me 20 minutes to get from one side of Clifton to the other today. But I will come over anytime for Lend. So just let me know how I can help. So if down the road, if you're like, I need help with slide design, bring Sarah back, right? I'm happy to come back. But just let Jen and Steph know if you need my contact information, if I can help in any way. I know a couple people had questions after, so I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have questions that are more specific to your context. So, but thank you so much for being willing to put up with my craziness today and being so participatory. It makes it far less painful to sit for 2 hours. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And please let me know what questions you have. And I will make sure they check Canvas, and anything I said that's not on there, I will make sure it's added for you so you have those resources. So thank you very, very much. And have a great almost weekend. We're so close. We're so close. Thank you, online folks.